you've already heard us correct each other a couple times on saying the word officer here. We're not saying officer here because these are not law enforcement officers. The lines have been increasingly blurred between military and police, and this has been more than ever. We're at the worst state of this that we have been in many decades. These people are military. The ICE is a military organization, and it's using procedures and rules of engagement that are more similar to Fallujah than they are to Mayberry. Like if you had a continuum, Mayberry and Andy Griffiths is on one end, and Fallujah and the occupying force is on the other. This is more like Fallujah than it is Mayberry. And there were no police officers actually on the scene who were trained to deal with civilian circumstances through normal rules of engagement that include identifying yourself as an officer.
Instead of conflict and aggression, here's governance built on grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka.
We're coming to you a little less than 48 hours after Renee Good was killed by ICE in Minneapolis. I want to explain Zapruder just for a moment for those of you who don't have that part of history locked in. Mr. Zapruder took a video of the murder of President Kennedy, and through all the investigations that took place contemporaneous to that event, this film was suppressed. They knew it existed. They couldn't use it. So the Warren Commission report, which I read when I was like 6 or 7 years old and couldn't figure out, was subsequently, shall we say, denied, debunked by the film that Zapruder took at the moment that Kennedy was killed. Today, we're going to take that same kind of analysis into what happened with Renee Good in Minneapolis. But before we do, Jim, I know you've got a couple things you want to say.
Yeah. First, I want to say that we will do what you just described, and I agree with you that Zapruder helps falsify the Warren Commission report. We have more film. We live in a different time, so there's at least 3 different angles of this now available. And so we will do some of that, and it's important to do that to set up what I really want to do because it shows Gracearchy, and we usually offer a unique piece of analysis. I think there's 2 things that you have to do in looking at the Renee Good story or any story like it. Number 1, you have to recognize that the shooter does not necessarily have perfect knowledge of what's going to happen. We'll touch on this more in detail later, but there is a frame-by-frame analysis that we're going to do that they didn't have accessible to them at the time that they did it. And that is important. And it is important to recognize that nobody in that situation had a frame-by-frame analysis. They didn't know all the different ways that their actions in that moment, whether it's the driver or the shooter, have any understanding at that moment. There was no thought to all the different ways that people would analyze this matter subsequently. And 2, you have to take into account the complete circumstances. There is no way to analyze this simply. I wish there was. I wish we could say open and shut, this is wrong and this is right. It would make everything a lot easier and it would lead to far less conflict. But part of the reason we have so much dispute at this moment is that there is a totality of circumstances and different actors observing the film, observing the event, are going to come to different conclusions because they will put emphasis on a different piece of the puzzle.
So clearly you're talking about the immigration issue that we now face as a country.
Yeah, and it's got to be, we have to take in the totality of the circumstance that even created this. There's people who say, I want to go back just a few seconds before this all started. That was my initial instinct, to want to see what happened in the 20 or 30 seconds.
Right, in the lead up before this. Yeah.
What were all of these circumstances, the totality of them? I find myself wanting to do that. But, and you should, but that's not far enough, as we're going to discuss. And yes. I just want to let everybody know, poor Bill, he comes in and he does these shows with me, and normally I have an outline, and I have some sense of what I'm going to say. And then
this is on you, man.
He has to grab hold and start riding along, right? Like, where's Jim going with this? And he does this thing very well that I appreciate, where he sits in your place as somebody in the audience, and he'll ask the question, he'll request a clarification for the things that I said, but today there's no outline. Today we're having a conversation. I have thoughts. I have definite thoughts. I've even written a few of them down so that I would remember words and names and different things. So I have a couple of notes here in front of me, but we have no outline. And we also have a couple of videos that we're going to share. We know we're going to share one particular video with you right here near the beginning, but we're not going to. I have no idea what Bill's going to say or ask me, and I have no idea where this conversation is going to go. So this should be a little bit different from your normal Gracearchy fare. All right, with that out of the way,
we will make our normal Gracearchy plug at the end. There is grace in this, Jim, and I'm glad that you mentioned that right up front, because as terrible as I'm feeling right now about it all,
yeah,
I know that there's light.
Yeah. All right, so should we start with the film, or do you?
Yeah, let's start with the 4 points of view kind of film.
I want to thank Ken Moellman. He's a Kentucky libertarian. He posted this video and gave us permission to use it. I have a tiny bit of concern because we believe we are using this under fair use, even though these videos don't belong to us, because Ken enhanced this and basically remixed this, and we are making commentary on it. So with that said, let's roll the video. You're going to see 4 videos on the screen. And it starts with just one. And the officer is immediately circled by Ken, so you can follow him throughout the interaction. So he's going behind the vehicle. He's being followed by a civilian in this case. He is not one of the 2 agents who will approach the vehicle and attempt to stop it and open the door. So he's doing a complete path around it. If you will notice, too, the vehicle immediately to the right of the Honda that is in question.
Yeah, that silver Ford Exploder.
It is, the door's open. Okay, so there is a limited path out. Like, you have to be the person driving the Honda Pilot. Her name is Renee Good. She needs to basically navigate between the open door, the officers to her left, and what will be an officer coming around to the front of her vehicle. So if you keep playing, you will see in the bottom right and in the top both bottom tiles, and in the top left, you will see him circling around the vehicle to where he goes in front of it.
This happens fast, so here we go.
Yes.
Okay, I got to hold there for a second. So the circle again is around in the top right. The circle is around.
Yes.
The back view of the
exactly. It's the opposite angle from the one that's on the left. So you're seeing the front of the Honda Pilot that Renee Good is driving, and then you're seeing the officer coming around the front of the vehicle.
You mean agent?
Agent. Thank you. We'll explain why he's correcting me in a moment.
Okay, let's roll forward. That officer that's now hidden in the upper, I'm sorry, that agent that's now hidden in the upper left is going to come around the front of the vehicle as Renee backs up.
Okay, stop right there at the end of the backup, right there. Okay, so what I want people to notice, and almost nobody has said this, I finally had a friend say it out loud on Facebook this morning, but it's, it takes basically 36 hours before I hear a single person, with all the people giving their analysis of this, to say the following thing out loud. She is backing up with her tires turned left. So what she's doing is, you can't see the officer completely right now on the front. Agent, thank you. But what she's doing is she's trying, I believe, to navigate between an open door that's on that vehicle to her right and him. So to do that, what she needs to do, because of where he had positioned himself, is she needed to back up a little bit with the wheel turned left, turn the wheel as far to the right as possible, and veer.
Yeah, so she can proceed down the street.
She successfully navigates the 2 impediments. She hits neither the door nor the officer. There's debate about this, and I understand why there's debate. It has to do with the fact that there is ice on the ground, and he uses the front of the vehicle to push himself off. Watch.
Okay. So he has, at this point, the circle around the shooter, he's now
He took 3
detached from the
shots.
vehicle.
And he took 3 shots.
And he's
almost
already made
everybody
3 shots.
on the internet seems to understand this regardless of which sides they're on. The first shot is through the windshield, and we have seen pictures of the shot through the windshield. Go back and rerun the whole thing, please, while we're talking. The first shot is through the windshield. The second 2 are through the window. The first one is taken at a roughly 90-degree angle, and the last one is taken from behind. I don't know what the angle would be. I'm not good at math. But he's shooting through the door. He has his arms still kind of almost in the doors. He's taking the last shot where she has already well cleared him.
And here it is.
So he'll come into view.
Bing.
Boom. Yeah, it's all done. It all happens very fast. Now, I want to say 2 things that a lot of people who do not carry concealed or have never been through training, go ahead and run that loop one more time, are not aware of. And that is that almost always you were trained in your training, because this is this is split second. I mean, all of the entire shooting happens in less than 3 seconds. Almost everybody is trained to do what's called a double tap. It is normal to shoot twice. And you are trained also that once you pull the trigger to shoot until the target has been neutralized. Both of those things are typical of training. And you say, well, that's just wrong. But you don't have a lot of time to think in those circumstances. It's not an analysis situation at that point. It is entirely an adrenaline situation. The thing that you lose control of first is your fine motor control, which includes your fingertips. And so you train to learn that you're going to place 2 shots. It's called a double tap, or you're going to shoot until the target is neutralized. So a lot of people are like, well, why didn't he just shoot the tires? Or why doesn't he, whatever. There's like all these people that like do this analysis that have never actually been through this before, don't understand what the training's like, let alone a real life scenario. Once he made the decision to take that gun out, which he does before, he does it at the exact same time she shifts gears. If we go back and we watch that film, I don't think any of the 4 angles we have are fantastic for this. But if you look closely on other videos that have been circulating around the web, what you will see is that she backs up and he's pulling his service revolver the split microsecond that the white lights on the back of her vehicle shut off, meaning she has shifted into drive. He made that decision that fast. He didn't make it like, what's interesting to me is he didn't wait until the vehicle started at him.
Yeah.
He made that decision at the moment the gear shifted.
So he had already determined a threat to his personal safety.
Which is interesting because he's holding a camera in the hand. And what I think we're going to learn, I cannot tell this for sure, but what I think we're going to learn is he didn't set the camera down. He's holding a phone in one hand. He's pulling out his service revolver with his right and then going in to shoot. Now, he may have dropped the phone after that, but I believe he managed, from what I can tell, to hang on to that phone. We'll get better in video. This will be better analyzed as time goes by. And if I were to lay a third disclaimer on all of the stuff that we would say, it's we are going to know more over time. There are maybe things, and it's likely to be things that we will say, or that you have said if you've been talking about this on social media, that will turn out to be wrong, will be an error. Because over time, the truth starts, we get more pieces of evidence and the truth starts to come together. We're operating on initial impressions here, but we have 3 different angles, which is, by the way, I wish we would have had a lot more photographic and video evidence in November 22nd, 1963,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And
so,
I wish
Jim,
the quality of video was as good.
You carry, and you've been trained how to do that. So if you were standing in this officer's shoes, who we don't know, this agent's shoes, can you in some way sort of stand there and view the situation? And I know it's Monday morning quarterbacking here, but do you perceive a threat had you been standing there that would have affected you materially?
Okay, yes. So I'm going to give my most complete answer right up front, since you asked that question. It's amazing how fast that happened. My most complete answer is that this does not end up being a justified shot, because if I had taken that same shot, we would have definitely been going to trial. I would have been prosecuted. I would have been prosecuted by the local Minnesota authorities under state law. I would have had to answer for why I felt that was going to happen. And they teach you in the training that you get that everything that you do is going to be analyzed in exactly the way we're talking right now in microseconds, and assumptions will be made from an uninformed position about your behavior. If you're a law enforcement officer, you should know this even better. And ICE has had actually something of an epidemic because of how they've chosen to interact with the public, of having cars come at them. And there is news out as we're sitting here. I have not had a chance to digest it completely, but there is news out that the agent who pulled the trigger had been hit by a car before. He's been through something last fall where he was.
Yes, I'd seen that too. He was injured and has recovered.
So he may have some trauma that he's dealing with.
Yes, clearly.
But trauma, it cannot be a piece of the puzzle for whether or not this is justified, but it can be for determining how the case should be handled, particularly the sentencing thereof.
Right.
But it would not actually mitigate whether or not this was or was not a justified shoot. You cannot simply say, so let's say this up front. Law enforcement has a get out of jail free card in these situations. And that is that they could say, I feared for my life. And these are magic words, and they're so magical that to say them basically absolves almost everything that happens in this situation. It doesn't work as a natural law. It's not a fail-safe situation, but it's a very, very, very effective tool to basically say, well, I'm allowed to do this. The second thing I would say is that a bullet is a lot smaller than a vehicle. And the physics of this situation are that you are not actually made any safer by shooting at something when you have a second option called getting out of the way. He did get out of the way. And honestly,
in fact, he was out of the way long before there was any danger.
Not long before. There is some debate here, and we will find out the truth about this, about whether or not his foot got run over.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we're going to find out that he did is that he pushed off of the vehicle, which makes it look like he got hit. And that would have been the right strategy to do. The right strategy would have been
I see you need to move away,
out of the way, or to push off of the vehicle to kind of, and there's ice there, which adds a little bit of extra drama. The street is clearly very slippery, which is true for the driver as well.
Yeah.
I don't believe that if I could not be justified or you could not be justified in this situation, shooting, then an officer cannot be justified in doing this shot. That's what I believe.
My observation was that this officer doesn't seem to be, well, I've never been approached by an officer with a drawn gun. This agent doesn't appear to be overly agitated or activated in a way. He seems to be pretty reasonable. He approaches slowly. Now, why he's approaching, we'll probably never have the background on that. Does he believe he's trying to corral a domestic terrorist? Is he there simply to try to restore order? How do we know? But he doesn't seem to be overly aggressive to me, Jim. Is that your read on this too?
Yeah, so the aggression was actually from the officers on the side. There is evidence emerging. We don't have the totality of it yet, that the audio, what we'll be able to pick up, will show that more than one order was given here. If you're told to get out of there and you're told to stop. Like I already have had conversations this morning with more than one person, because one of them is going to think I'm speaking to them, so I'm speaking of all of you, suggesting that, these are agents and she was given an order. It is probably not that clear. And as much as we should take into account the thoughts and feelings and attitudes and beliefs of the individual holding the weapon, we should take into account the thoughts and the values and the situation that the individual believed they were experiencing driving. There is no training. No one goes for training, very few, go for training on how to deal with a difficult law enforcement situation.
Yes.
And there is always an expectation that the person who is dealing with the law enforcement situation, there are a group of people who believe that everything the cop tells you to do, you should do. There are people who believe that everything that is happening, you just should simply suffer. There are a group of people that believe that everything that's done to you, you probably had coming. And I'm sorry, you're irredeemable. You just haven't had it happen to you. And I pray it doesn't, but that's why you're able to hold those attitudes.
So you use the L word here. Can we zoom out on that a little bit here?
The L word
law.
Being law.
The law. The law does not authorize ICE. in the first place, and we've
Oh
done a
my
whole
gosh.
episode on that.
We did a whole episode. Folks, 14 minutes. The video is 14. It's the shortest episode we ever did. It is packed with information. It is very, very dense. It was a conversation. We turned on the camera one day
Like
after
this.
recording a podcast and just sat down and said, hey, let's talk about this. And we laid out and explained why ICE is an illegal agency. We went through the entire argument, soup to nuts. So if you don't agree with it, pause this video now. It is episode 134, Why ICE is an Illegal Agency. It's 14 minutes. I would prefer you watch that rather than what we're talking about now. It is episode 134. We'll put it down in the show notes in case you didn't catch it. But folks, that's the setting.
That's the setting for this. And, you know, you can agree with that or not. You can decide that ICE is a perfectly constitutional legal agency of the federal government, and you can ride that argument right here to the street in Minneapolis where this happened, or you can say that ICE is not legal, and you can ride that right to the street in Minneapolis where this happened. Whether or not your belief is this or that, we still have to deal with the fact that an employee of the federal government who was supposedly trained to do his job has murdered an innocent person. I'm going to say it.
Okay, but I have a problem with just pushing it aside like that. I'm glad we brought it up, but I have a problem with just pushing it aside because to me, like if you go back and say, okay, how did this all start? Like my initial instinct, a lot of people's initial instinct was like, okay, what happened in the 30 or 40 or 60 seconds before this event happened? Because we don't have enough video. It starts too late, in my humble opinion. We lack sufficient context. Remember, we have to have the complete circumstances here. But I believe the complete circumstances includes the fact that this is an occupying force. Now, you've already heard us correct each other a couple times on saying the word officer here. We're not saying officer here because these are not law enforcement officers. The lines have been increasingly blurred between military and police, and this has been more than ever. We're at the worst state of this that we have been in many decades. These people are military. The ICE is a military organization, and it's using procedures and rules of engagement that are more similar to Fallujah than they are to Mayberry. Like if you had a continuum, Mayberry and Andy Griffiths is on one end, and Fallujah and the occupying force is on the other. This is more like Fallujah than it is Mayberry. And there were no police officers actually on the scene who were trained to deal with civilian circumstances through normal rules of engagement that include identifying yourself as an officer. And officers, to their credit, have a badge with their name and a name tag. There's a number on the badge and their face is exposed, and they have the courage to act. Now, the reason we have a masked, non-badged, occupying force dressed in military gear and behaving in military fashion is because they are occupying. And the way that we know this, we did another episode, it happens to be episode 135 following this, where we talked about why the progressive left is in such a bad pickle criticizing all of this. And that is because they believe that there shouldn't be a 10th Amendment. They don't believe that states shouldn't be able to be sovereign over their own territory in matters of criminal justice. And so the federal government is coming in and behaving in a way that is unwelcome inside the state. There are a significant percentage of the population that don't want that there in Minnesota. And they're being told, sorry, we're sending these people from Washington to you, and we are going to impose our order on you.
Yeah,
so
which is getting pushback from the mayor and the governor.
Right, because there's when you lose, we just got through talking about Jimmy Lai. When you lose these ways of being able to voice your grievances, and the situation's being escalated as it is, both rhetorically and by force, the opposite side of grievance expression is going to ramp itself up. This is not me taking sides with this. This is me pointing out nature at work.
Yes, force invokes a counterforce.
Yes, this is physics.
Every single time it's tried.
This is relational physics.
Yep.
In a society. So that's what you're seeing here. So let's assume the worst of this woman, that she is some kind of terrorist trying to impede their duty. That's it. That occupying forces automatically attract resistance. It's like gravity.
So this isn't a chicken and an egg. We can say with clarity that if you send an occupying force into a peaceful community, there will be resistance.
Yes. Now, there might be other problems that they're addressing with this ICE force that you may recognize as real problems. So you may be somebody who believes that we have to get certain types of immigrants out of the country and that the deportations are a good idea. But that doesn't necessarily mean you endorse the method by which it's being done.
Yes. Yes. I think we can all agree that we don't want to import criminals to America. That seems like a good idea.
Okay. I mean, we could have a whole different... Listen, the only thing I want to say about the immigration issue in this entire episode is that the Democrats believe that this gives them greater political power. This gives them electoral advantage. And Republicans believe that that's why Democrats are backing immigrants. Okay. And the truth of the matter is that what we overlook in this situation are the real human beings who are coming to a great land of opportunity. It's such a compliment to us who want to expand and improve their lives. If you want to talk about, wait a minute, there's all these criminals that are also coming. Well, we also happen to have Venezuela in the headlines right now. And just a few months ago, we were hearing all about this gang called Tren de Agua, who came from where?
Oh, yeah.
A country that had an embargo on it and then a blockade. The population of Venezuela has gone down, which is not normal. It's gone down by about 2 million people. And so those people have some of them have relocated here as a result of U.S. government policy. Okay, so there was something that drove them here in the first place. So you want to talk about chickens and eggs? I mean, we've got literally a set of original sins that result in consequences that people say, well, that means we need to escalate to this level, which results in new consequences, which say we got to result to this level. And all of a sudden, Renee Good is dead behind the vehicle, behind the wheel of her vehicle.
I've heard, by the way, that her partner was in the vehicle as well. Do you have any insight on that?
I don't know that. I'm a little bit confused about the whole relational situation. I understand that she had a husband who died in 2023.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I'm not. Is there a reason you asked that question?
Well, just to acknowledge that there may be another witness that we don't yet know about.
Yeah, I think there are going to turn out to be multiple witnesses. I have seen video of a guy saying that he is a doctor wanting to go at least check.
And he wanted to assist, and he was
from being able to assist. Now, I don't think that would have changed the outcome of this situation.
No, she was probably dead before the vehicle crashed.
Hit the car, yeah. But I want people to understand there's a totality of events here, and people say, well, you have to analyze the full totality. Yes, you do. You have to know what was in the mind of the driver. You have to know what was in the mind of the shooter. You have to know though, that before they ever got to that point, there were another set of circumstances that put them both there that day. And those sets of circumstances were not chosen by either of those people. Although I would argue to some degree that they were chosen a little bit by the officer in the line of work that he's chosen.
Yes.
Okay.
The agent.
I think if you, thank you, the agent. If you choose to be an employee of ICE, you are going to be asked to do immoral things. Just know that in advance. It's A input and B output. That's what's going to happen. You're going to eventually be asked to do something that is morally uncomfortable. And you're going to have to push that aside for some quote unquote greater good. I don't know how you sleep at night, but I would recommend you find other employment. I'm sorry. This show's called Gracearchy, and everybody thinks it means I'm supposed to be a doormat and kind, and everybody's thing is their thing and whatever. But no, we see that this is literally resulting in some pretty disastrous results.
I asked you a question the other day about grace, and this may be the place to sort of explore that, Jim. I asked you if grace was anti-fragile, and I asked that because anti-fragility means that you're doing something like working a muscle. You're strengthening a muscle by working it. And as horrific as this is, are we in a situation here where our grace muscles are being strengthened by the way we choose to respond to this?
So now I understand why you asked that question, because the other day when you did it, I didn't have the rest of this context, and I didn't have an answer, but I do now. It is a muscle.
So how do we strengthen it right now in the face of this?
Oh, thank you. Okay. So You know what a Rorschach or inkblot test is, right?
Oh yeah, the inkblot test, right?
I want everybody that is taking the side right now of Renee Good behind the wheel and believing that the ICE officer is a moral, corrupt murderer. If this is your belief system, I'm speaking to you now. And I want you to apply that same rule to Ashley Babbitt at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. She was shot by a Capitol Hill police officer breaking through a glass that was next to a locked door, climbing over a file cabinet, I believe, and she was shot by an officer, and it was ruled a justifiable homicide. If you thought, she screwed around and found out, most people use an F there at the beginning, but this is a family show. You thought she had just got what she was coming. She played a stupid game and won a stupid prize. And now today you're indignant. I want you to tell me what the differences between those situations are. I want you to explain them completely and clearly. Now, maybe you could justify that, but the situations are really similar. I'm going to give you another name. And this one to me is even, it's even more dramatic and interesting. And that's Kyle Rittenhouse, who during a riot that same year pulled his weapon in defensive use. He was exonerated in court, as he should have been. The evidence was very clear that his acts, once he were actually acts of self-defense, and that he tried to avoid using his weapon. He showed tremendous restraint. And it was a justifiable shoot. By the way, I wouldn't want to be Kyle. I suspect Kyle has nightmares. One of the people that he shot survived, and I suspect that person has nightmares. I wouldn't want to be in that position. But now, inkblot, if you immediately were outraged by this action, but you thought it was okay in those situations, and you wanted Kyle to be found guilty, because there were a lot of people who want to be found guilty. I had a friend who posted on Facebook and said, man, it looks like, the totality of the evidence that he was, and man, his friends all savaged him, started calling him names, told him what a rotten human being he was. Couldn't believe he was posting this. Charlie Kirk. If you celebrated or thought it was okay for Charlie Kirk to be shot, right? At the end of the day, this is a question of humanity. And what I'm not hearing is enough. Like, there are people on one side saying, well, please understand what was going through the officer's head. Fine. Please also understand what was going on for the driver's head for the time that it still was intact. We can't actually tap and ask her. The person who pulled the trigger will be able to tell us some story about what they were thinking that day. Whether it's true or not, they will be able to tell us a story. But Renee Good will not. So like, for example, the way that she's backing up and turning right, I believe, but this is my belief, I'll never be able to prove this. We won't even be able to ask her, that she was literally trying to attempt to navigate a way out of there where she didn't hit anything or anyone. Which is, by the way, the normal human instinct when you're driving a vehicle.
Sure, you're being rushed by multiple agents who are hollering at you. I'd get out of there.
I also want to know if you were running around using phrases like FAFO, which stands for F around and find out. If you're doing that right now, and I actually know somebody that I respect and had enjoy their work, and they're doing this right now. I don't like it. I just want to be clear. I want to know why it's not the case that the officer choosing to position himself in front of a moving vehicle, thank you, choosing to position himself in front of a moving vehicle isn't an FAFO.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Because again, a vehicle is a lot bigger than a gun, a lot bigger than a bullet. And the driver is going to have less control over the circumstances if you shoot them. There was nothing at that moment that increased his safety. Now, I will say, you asked me a question at the very beginning. There is a world where it's pretty much the die is cast, that he's going to get hit and he's not going to be able to get out of the way, where that would be completely the right action to take. But it looks to me like this is an attempt to apprehend or to get the person to comply with an order. The death penalty for not following an order on the spot, no trial, the death penalty. I have a hard time with that. And I think this should be investigated as a potential homicide. Now, that doesn't mean that I think he should be found guilty. I don't know. The totality of the evidence should be used to determine that. But what I see here is enough that it's worth asking some questions. And I want to go back and suggest this goes way, way, way before those two people encountered each other.
Sure,
way before we get a video to sit and analyze.
Yeah, this has been happening for at least a year now.
None of this stuff should be happening. None of it. Because ICE is an unconstitutional agency. And the state of Minnesota, if the governor says, I don't want you here, that ought to be enough.
Yep.
That ought to be enough. It shouldn't have existed in the first place. And the governor should be able to say, under solid 10th Amendment principles. But see, this is something the left and the right didn't ever want to grant. So when the right has said, we want to be free of federal gun laws, the left has shut them down and said, the heck with your states' rights argument. By the way, it's the wrong phrasing, but the heck with your states' rights argument. You can go to hell, right? And then they come along on the left and say, well, we want sanctuary cities. It's the same exact argument. And in both cases, the local authority should be able to make that decision. That was the original design of the system that we have.
The defederalization of the social sector is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Whether it's the way that federal money is misused by Minnesota child care centers, or the way that ICE is misused by the federal government as an occupying force rather than as a...
Boy,
I don't even know what to call it.
Minnesota's had a rough start to 2026.
It's been
Pat Barnum, a friend of mine on Facebook, writes the following. ICE is swarming my city. So I've had takeout from small Hispanic-owned or managed restaurants every night this week. They are peaceful, hardworking members of our society, contributing to our economy in meaningful ways. A significant number of their clients are afraid to go out and about, and employees don't dare go to work. Restaurants have incredibly thin margins, and they won't survive this for long. The one I headed to tonight is closed. This is beyond sad. It is beyond frightening. This is beyond enraging. Be a good neighbor and support these businesses, she writes. And if you know families that can't feel safe leaving their homes, ask what you can do to help them. Grocery shop, kid bus stop pickup, escorting them to the doctor, delivering a meal. Meanwhile, watch out for ICE vehicles and spread the word when you see them.
I'm not sure what other questions I have for you, Jim, right now. I'm in overwhelm on this. What's the lifeline? What can I grab onto here?
There are no easy answers when you get to this point. If you're sitting in the doctor's office after a lifetime of smoking cigarettes and you're given a diagnosis of lung cancer, the doctor's not to blame for giving you that diagnosis. There's a series of decisions that were made a long time ago that led up to the moment in which you find yourself. I believe the number one solution to this problem, really seriously, is that we, number one, treat humans like humans. If we had a sane process, and I don't even believe in processes, by the way, I believe this should be a totally free space. But as long as we have a federal government, there should be a sane process that processes as many people as want to come. We should end our war on drugs. We should end all the military interventions that we're doing around the planet, because neither of these things have made us any safer, quite the opposite. And it would absolve or end a lot of these concerns and questions we have about who's coming and why they're coming. We should end the welfare state. We should stop giving out welfare, period, because it was inevitable that it was going to be used fraudulently and leak out these ways, and that resentments and scapegoating would follow, which is what the politicians traffic in all the time as they grow and grow and grow our state. I don't think anybody is being completely objective about this. And frankly, every one of us has biases that we're bringing to the table. This case is tragic. In fact, I believe everybody's fundamental humanity ought to have a great deal of sympathy, regardless of where you're at politically, for the person who died and their family here. But it's not the root of the problem. These two people were on a street, the same street, at the same time, forever a part of each other's history, in ways that will traumatize the agent, I'm sure of it. And it all happened because of a series of built-up statist controls and resentments piled on top of those, and yet more statist controls. And so my message, my plea to everyone, isn't just to downsize DC. Let's get rid of almost everything it does as quickly as we possibly can, starting with this unconstitutional agency that we laid out the full case for in episode 134. Let's get rid of ICE.